Thanks for the intro, Kirti. And for folks that don't know, Kirti and I competed very intensely for the past 15 years when we were both working at companies in essentially very similar positions. So I was super excited recently to not have to compete with them and be able to partner with them. Super excited about that, and want to say both congratulations to him and the Anyscale team for their work. I want to tell you a little bit about Samsara. So we think about things a little bit differently at Samsara. We're really focused on transforming the world of physical operations. So when we look at pictures like the ones you'll see up here, we start to think about all the devices, all the equipment, and how we can really help lead digital transformations for these companies that are out making the world a better place. We're really focused on making them more safe, more efficient, and more sustainable. And these large, complex operations are super asset heavy and really labor intensive. So if you think about construction, there's yellow iron. If you think about field services, these are folks out doing things, helping to deliver goods, helping maintain our public infrastructure. We work with food and beverage distributors, transportation and logistics. These are really the companies that keep the world running. And every time we see a piece of equipment out there, we think about how can we help bring that equipment online. These physical operations are the backbone of the world economy. If we look at the companies that operate this type of infrastructure, they actually account for about 40% of the world's GDP. In the past 8 years, we've grown a tremendous amount by going and partnering with these companies, figuring out what problems they have to solve, how to help them monitor it, and then keep going from problem to problem, helping them to optimize their operations. We've ended up partnering across different verticals. We're working with 5 of the 10 top waste management companies, 6 of the 10 top construction companies, 5 of the 10 top transportation companies, and 5 of the 10 top chemical carriers in the US. Each one of these industries is really, really interesting because if you start peeling back what they're doing, it feels like watching an episode of how it's built. Chemical carriers is a good example. At first glance, it might be a little bit hard to relate to what they're doing, but if you've ever gone swimming in a public pool, you've actually experienced their product and how they deliver. They're the companies that deliver the chlorine that will show up at a school or a municipal pool and make sure that that's safe for you to enjoy. And in a similar way, a lot of the other companies, whether it's construction, are responsible for these huge infrastructure products that we're able to enjoy, even in a building like this, thinking back to what a massive project it must have been and taken years to complete something like this. So for my background, I was a technology person. I have a background in Wi-Fi. But when we started Meraki, we really wanted to partner with these companies and figure out what new technologies, since so much was changing across AI, across big data and everything else, what can we bring to them and how can we start with working backwards from what they're trying to accomplish, look at what kind of technologies that we can identify and then help to them to actually run a feedback loop, very similar to how we ourselves as AI practitioners and things like this constantly have to go through and iterate, build our models out, work on iterating on the training setup. We kind of take a similar view in partnering with our customers, helping them get data about what's going out in the field, helping them analyze it, and then recommending things that they could do to make improvements in their operations. I want to give you a sense for the scale that we're able to operate at. So this is a snapshot of all of the vehicles that we're deployed on for our telematics solution. A snapshot of the roads that they drove in 1 hour, and you can obviously see this basically mirrors the physical infrastructure in the US that we end up being a part of and being able to observe every day. In the last year alone, we've had about 70 billion miles driven, and this has generated about 10 trillion data points that we've processed in our backend. And those data points might be things like GPS, it might be how fast the vehicle's going, it also might be things like a video clip of something that happened that we pulled off of one of our AI dash cams. And we take all of this information, aggregate it in dashboards that we have. We run AI models both at the edge, on firmware devices, on hardware that we might deploy, and then also aggregate that information and make it easy to process so that folks can pull information from our systems and then put it into their own and make decisions based on that information. This is what our platform looks like. We have a bunch of different applications that we have. Usually our customers will deploy 2 to 3 of these in one go. Our biggest application is safety, so that's AI dash cams that sit in the cab and are able to process video, recognize safety events. We have a telematics solution, so this is doing things like running both more traditional algorithms to understand anomalies in data that we're pulling out from vehicles. It pulls things like fault codes from the onboard computer that a car has so that we can understand which vehicles might need maintenance and surface that information so that mechanics at these companies can be very targeted in the applications and the vehicles that they're going out and trying to surface in a way to really make it much more efficient for them. We also have a series of asset trackers that run and help understand utilization for our customers. We aggregate all this information together in our back end and then run AI models on top of it to help construct kind of a digital clone of that mirrors their physical infrastructure out in the field. So I want to give you an idea of what this might look like if you're a customer. If you walk through and you think through that you are responsible for managing a safety program for a company that has thousands of drivers, how is that going to work? Well, what you do is we work with them to get our telematics solution and our safety solution in their vehicles. We start pulling data from that, and then we aggregate it up and create really simple dashboards that a safety manager at one of these companies could use so that they can manage a safety program with a very small team for a huge number of drivers. So you'll see in this, we've gone through, and this is a view that you might see if you were one of those managers. You log onto our dashboard system. You'll see kind of scorecards where we've gone through and tried to quantify exactly like how good and how safe some of the drivers are so that they don't have to go through, for instance, and retrain their entire fleet of drivers. They can focus on the spots that they need and be very targeted about where they're spending their time. So another view that they have, we make it super easy for people to coach. So what this might surface for an individual driver, if you're a safety manager, is clicking through and seeing where we've gone through and looked at all the driving time for a driver and filtered out the most relevant results for them, and then also gone through and recommended what types of trainings that they might need given those targeted interventions. So this makes it really easy for the safety managers to go through. They can, in about 5 minutes, go through and really intervene with certain drivers that they need, surface, understand what's going on, and then end up efficiently going through and improving safety. So this is one of our customers. I'm going to walk through this specific example. USIC, they are a leading provider of underground public utility locating services. So if you've ever been involved in a construction project or just even driven by one, you might see the signs that say call before you dig. And this is the company who will pick up the phone when you call. They send technicians out. They go out, they mark where the pipes might be so that if someone's doing construction, when they dig, they won't hit one of those pipes and cause a huge accident. What's interesting about USIC and a lot of these companies that are doing physical operations, if you go to their website, they have a couple tabs at the top. The first one is the services they provide, so you'll be able to read about the public utility locating services. But the second one up there is a whole tab dedicated and a whole web portion on their website dedicated to safety culture, because it's that important for them when they're talking both to the customers, their employees, and everyone else. They have a huge operation and a lot of processes around safety because their work is inherently pretty dangerous and risky. And if you aggregate any amount of risk over 12,000 technicians, there are a number of incidents that might happen every day. So they've gotten really good at managing safety and really driving down risk over a number of years as they've been operating this company. What we partnered with them for was to really focus on vehicle safety, because all these technicians have to drive to sites. to do the work. And this was an area where they didn't have as much instrumentation and they didn't have as much visibility on what was going on. So they installed our AI dash cams and ran one of their video safety products there, and then instituted a driver safety program where they worked on scorecards for the drivers. They partnered with all the drivers to really decide how to drive down the number of accidents that they were having. And as a result of these processes, once we went through the trial, we did a bunch of measurements before and after they implemented our system and found that they were actually able to drive down seatbelt violations by about 85%. So results like these, when you aggregate them across thousands or tens of thousands of drivers, actually end up having a gigantic ROI for the company and making a material difference in their safety. It's pretty obvious like why everybody should wear seatbelts, but they take, if you have an incident and you're wearing a seatbelt versus not, it might turn a very severe accident into a very minor one. And if you aggregate this over thousands of driving hours, it makes an actual difference in the number of accidents that a larger fleet might see, and ends up having a material difference on the outcomes that they see every year. So we were super excited to see results like these, and these are pretty consistent when we end up partnering for safety programs. Now, there's a second thing which you might ask, like, I would assume AI models are pretty good about doing this, but one of the hardest things that we end up working on at Samsara is making these models very good. And we went through a period a couple years ago as we started to scale up with the number of customers that we were supporting and the number of applications that we were doing. As we were building out our AI team and really starting to scale, our infrastructure just wasn't scaling with us. And that's when we started to really partner with AnyScale, rework our architecture across the board to focus on how we could scale the number of models that we have, the number of applications that we're working on, and also the number of people working on the team so that we could do more for our customers. One of the biggest, hardest things about working with large enterprise customers is actually maintaining the quality bar in the models that we're rolling out and doing monitoring of them. And seatbelt usage, at first glance, we might think that it's something that models are pretty good at and out of the box, but I wanted to share a couple of examples of what makes this particularly difficult and some of the tricky instances to work through. So this is one of them where I think, and I know everybody works through these when you're working on a new AI model. You want to understand the failure cases and go through. But for seatbelt cases, this is a pretty interesting one. You can see this person in this vehicle is clearly wearing a shoulder bag. So at first glance, you may be like, okay, well, yeah, he doesn't actually have a seatbelt on. And then you realize actually he does have this person does have a seatbelt on. And then at second glance, you realize that it's actually under his arm, if that makes sense. So it's not actually like properly in there. So this is a particularly tricky one that as we just kind of end up seeing across so many drivers, really interesting failure cases. I think this is another example of one of the cases in one of the cows that we see. So you'll notice a couple things in this image. The first one is that out in the real world, where people install the dash cams, it's actually quite complex. You can see that thing hanging over there. You can see the CB radio, if that makes sense, that was like hung up right here that the person was using to talk back with the dispatchers. It's not a seatbelt, obviously. And then you'll notice you can see it over here, and then on that side too, there is another seatbelt in there. The fascinating thing when we were looking at this data, he's not, it's buckled down through here, and you might be like, well, it kind of has a seatbelt on. The fascinating thing when we pulled up and we saw a cluster of these images start to show up in our data set, to generate our ground truth data, right, we end up looking at a bunch of different things. We label it, we look at the other sensor values coming out. We actually have the telematics unit in the vehicles there. We could read the seatbelt status out on that sensor there. Fascinating thing when we started to see these failure cases, we actually looked at the sensor on the vehicle, and they were telling us that the seatbelt was actually plugged in, if that makes sense. We couldn't figure out what was going on. We actually called out the customers and the dispatchers themselves and showed them this image, and we were like, can you help us work through what's going on? And they said, oh, I know exactly what's going on. They said he opened up this person opened up the cab door, plugged in the seatbelt, and then sat on top of it. If that makes sense. And we were like, okay, that explains a lot. So it's kind of an interesting application where it's actually like very tricky in some of these situations. And when you're running at scale, being able to go through and really understand the failure cases is absolutely essential because some of these cases end up really coming up and affecting product quality. So that was the seatbelt case. I think recently this year we've rolled out some new algorithms. We've been working on drowsiness detection, which is a new type of safety application that we're really excited about. This is a really interesting application because with the dash cam, it's a different type of classification. It's obviously looking at what's going on over time. And what we've ended up finding is that we're able to collect enough data off of the dash cams to actually feed it to the algorithms and let them take in a bunch of different signals. An AI dash cam looking at this can, the models can start to recognize if somebody's rubbing their eyes, yawning, heavy blinking. And what we've ended up seeing is that actually sometimes the models can actually be better than humans at detecting some of this. We've had this data rolled out with some of our larger enterprise customers so far, and I was just on the phone probably 2 weeks ago with a large oil field services company that was almost emotional about the impact that this had when they had rolled it out to their company. They said they were getting calls, and if you put yourselves in the shoes of the customer, this is a company that's delivering their folks are driving heavy machinery around. It's big trucks. It's big equipment, stuff that if they have an accident for it, it's very different than having an accident at low speed in a smaller vehicle. It's actually probably severe, and it may end up impacting other people. They had gone through they were having across several thousand drivers, about 2 to 3 incidences a day of drowsy driving that the operators, their dispatchers, were finding out about. So that means this wasn't the events that they had skipped over or that they didn't find out about that the driver was able to recover. It was like they either went off-road or had some other major incident that they were being externally notified about. Once they rolled out this detection, they were so excited in the first month of the trial, they said that they went to having, at the time I spoke on the phone with them, they had gone 32 days having 0 incidents of drowsy driving. So it's super cool to be able to see these, the algorithms and the impact that the AI work that we're doing and these techniques can have on people's lives. So we're using, I want to touch a little bit, we're using Ray across the board. Every time we talk about these models, we use Ray for orchestration. We use it for model training. We use it to sample events out in the field, pull them back, incorporate that into our training data set. And then we also use it for serving inference and serving up these models, running them both in the back end. And then we obviously run a lot of models over at the edge. But it's been really transformational for us to be able to operate these applications both at scale and across a large number of customers. So I'll stop there. We are really excited about these applications, and I think one interesting thing for us as we've been going through and partnering with these customers, physical operations hasn't been traditionally if we rewind 10 or 15 years ago, wasn't super technology heavy. But we have seen a real transformation as we've been partnering with these companies. There's kind of a newer generation that is operating these companies that grew up with a lot of the online tools that we've come to kind of expect in the software world. And they're asking questions like, what else can I do? What other AI models can I partner with you guys, or are you guys hearing about other cool technology? And I think there's a real opportunity here with how big this market is and how much of our lives that it touches to have a huge impact with the types of models that we've all been talking about and the new technology that's going on. We have a chunk of our team here, so I would love it, if you guys are interested in some of the applications or have ideas, please engage with them. And I just want to say thank you to the Anascale team for the partnership over the last couple of years, and I'm really excited what we'll be able to do in the future.